Hello, everyone. Welcome to another sociology lecture. I am Dr. Dilsora Fozilova, and I will be discussing with you a very important theory by Edwin Sutherland, which called differential association theory. So, according to this theory, our socialization, how we are socializing, which groups we are socializing with, is very, very important to how we accept laws or how we reject laws, our attitudes towards laws, and how we look at societal norms and expectations. So we will be talking about that. But before that, I have something very, very exciting. So I have a guest here who wants to talk about this before I start my lecture. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us about what you want to talk?
Hello, my name's Marie-Ange, and pretty much sharing my experience as I come from a pretty unique background where I could not find a way to identify with society when I was younger in a mainstream and I guess normal way. So that led me to associate myself with different circles that gave me different perspectives on society and made it that the laws that were made by the government and that average people follow just didn't seem to apply to me in my head. Um, I don't know how to explain.
Yeah, that's really good. And how did you feel? Like you told me how proud you felt even you were under certain circumstances, but when you look at the CEO of some business, you look down to them, right?
Yeah. So I would get a lot of positive attention for negative behavior. And so what would eventually happen was I didn't know where the line was where bad was bad and good was good. My moral compass was kind of twisted. And so what would happen is I would when I would be faced with societal norms and people who follow them, I would look down on them because I didn't see any positive attention in my life that came from that behavior. And so I couldn't understand why they would choose to do that. They must be fool, they must be sheeps, they just don't know. And yet I'm standing in a objectively worse position than them in my life, but in immensely superior headspace where I think I'm just better than them because I'm worse off than them, which makes very little sense when you say it out loud like that. But when you're feeling it and when you're being taught it, it makes sense. There's also kind of this want that like you identify with something, and because you identify with something and it has this negative connotation, instead of trying to change your identity to it because you feel that identity is so hard to change, you just try to change the connotation. And so you find this twisted pride in doing the wrong thing, if that makes sense.
Yes, and how that starts to happen? Like, what was the influence? Basically, that Sutherland's theory says, like, your exposure to this certain group, certain individuals, changes your attitudes towards norms and regulations of society, right? Or mainstream society. So, for you, how that happened? Like, the exposure to other groups, or
For me specifically, I think it was a combination of exposure to those groups and a lack within society's norms.
right?
Right? If I if I would have grown up in a way that made me feel accepted by my peers and accepted in, my environment, I think I would have been less um impressionable
Right.
to the sub societies and subcultures that I ended up running with. I think because there was this gap in my identity where I didn't fit, like I didn't feel like I fit in society. I felt like growing up everyone had a manual to life and I must have like missed out on the day where they handed those out. You know? And
That's very interesting way of putting it.
yeah, and so I was then exposed to these people who also felt that way, right?
Right.
They also felt like they don't belong. And in finding other people that feel the same like non-belonging, you start to feel like you belong because you feel like you don't belong.
Right. You're empowered because you find like-minded people.
Yeah.
So you have sense of belonging, also empowerment within the group.
Yeah, and it starts off small because you're like, oh, I'm not alone in the way that I feel. Right. But you're
Right.
not quite like them yet because you're not old enough, you haven't done the same experiences yet. So you start to kind of get a morsel of this positive feeling of you belong. And it's very, very easy to keep feeding morsel by morsel. Just
Right.
like, okay, well, if I do this bad behavior, I start to associate myself more with this identity and I start to become more like them.
Right.
And the
Right.
more I become like them, the more I start to feel complete in myself because now I'm starting to get this idea of who I am and what it means.
Identity. Right. Right.
Exactly.
Right. Very good. And then when you do these things, right? And then what is the justification behind it? Like, are you feeling resentment towards the mainstream society or something has happened to you? Or are you feeling that there is other justifications that you can break these laws or, norms?
It depends on the laws and norms, but I think for the most part, it turns into laws are man-made.
Right.
And they're man-made within a norm, and you rationalize that the people who created these laws were people who didn't think like you.
Right.
And that was the large average at the time that these laws were created. And therefore, if the norm in if the norm in your direct environment is different than the norm in your greater environment, you start to feel that the laws shouldn't apply to you.
Right.
And so you don't you'll sometimes openly defy them because you want to posture in front of other people and reassert your label that you've told yourself that this is who I am. But most of the time it's just looking at ways of being like, okay, these laws exist, how can I skirt around them?
Oh, yes.
Right? Because I should be allowed to go by my own laws. I didn't make these. And you get this twisted sense of my direct environment is more important than the greater environment it lives in.
Is there any resentment towards mainstream society or not?
There is, because when you're part of a subculture or a direct environment that is morally doing wrong things, but you don't see it at the time, and the societal norm, the societal view on that group of people and that label is of a negative connotation, you don't want to agree with that.
Right.
And so it turns into, well, now you're going to nitpick what's wrong with them. Like, a very like personal, you know, example or metaphor would be like, I used to argue with my brother a lot, right? And we would start an argument like why he should do the dishes and not me. But by the end of the argument, we weren't arguing about the dishes anymore. It was, well, that's rich coming from you because here's a character defect you have.
Right.
And then he would do the same thing, and we're attacking our personalities more
Right.
than what the argument
Yeah,
was.
yeah, you forgot about that.
And that's what ends up happening, but on a larger scale.
Mhm.
You see that society does not accept the label that you've become. You only know this label as the only affirming goodness in your life. And so you feel like you're being personally attacked. So you start personally attacking society.
Right.
And going, well, you're just a sheep for going to work. You're just ignorant for listening to whatever the government tells you to do. You're, just nothing because you have no individual thought and you're not thinking of your own laws and you're just doing what you're told. You're not critically thinking, which is kind of false, but that's how you reaffirm yourself that you're in the right, even if you're in the wrong.
Right. That's very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing your insights, actually. I will just pause for a second. So it was very exciting and rich to have a speaker with actually firsthand experience, which with what we are going to talk today. So now let's talk about Sutherland's differential association theory. I'll share with you my PowerPoint and continue the lecture. Right. As soon as I open my PowerPoint, you can see just Edwin Sutherland's picture pops up, which is, I think, great. So differential association theory that introduced by Edwin Sutherland. So let's see what he says. So for him, the definitions that values, norms, and attitudes people have or use to justify, to rationalize their actions in society is very important element in differential association theory. When people are exposed to more favorable definitions of deviant behavior, like my speaker said, and then they feel empowered. Like for example, if they say like speeding is fun and following the laws are just kind of constrain us, like you need to enjoy your life, that we are justifying bad behavior because speeding can cause a lot of accidents, right? Because they are justifying that, they will go ahead and speed and have fun with driving, right? That is what definitions mean for Sutherland. So differential association, the idea that individuals learn different kinds of behaviors, including deviant behaviors or criminal behaviors, based on the proportion of interaction, who they are interacting with more. If you have, for example, good family members and the good friends, so portion of your circle of socialization is, that morally defined and just kind of follows societal norms, but there's a big portion you're socializing with a wrong crowd. So when you're socializing with that crowd more, your socialization with this group, like people, good family members or friends, or undermined or small compared to the socialization you have with other groups. And socialization, when we talk about socialization in society, that is the base of society. We socialize to internalize stuff, and we socialize to externalize what we know and who we are. The socialization starts, it's a lifelong process. It starts when the babies are born, when they are learning how to hold a spoon, learning how to walk, learning how to put their clothes on, learning how to speak, and all of those are learned through socialization. And then when they go to school, the another social institution, they will learn their ABCs through socialization. We learn all kinds of skills through socialization. And also when we get up in the morning and put our clothes on and going outside in the world, we are again socializing who we are and what we stand for. The way we hold ourselves, the way we talk, the way we introduce ourselves to the world is part of socialization. So socialization also very important to understand criminal behavior. Criminal behavior is learned just like any other behavior or any other skills through socialization within one's environment. Basically, this theory is saying that you choose your environment, and your environment will shape who you are. And then the second one is importance of choosing your group or friend circles, right? People are more likely to adapt deviant or criminal behavior from their close friends, family members, and it can be anybody through your school, anybody through a teamwork, or any of them. So the people need to choose their environment to shape their behavior. So some more key concepts of differential association theory is learning through interaction. We kind of like reflected on it a little bit. Criminal behavior is learned through social interactions with others, especially with intimate groups within the family and peers. This means like the criminal behavior or deviant behavior is not born. We don't have that kind of attitudes when we are born. We learned it throughout our life with our social interactions with other people, especially the ones that close to us. It starts with, sharing a story, sharing who you are, and then it involves different kinds of techniques and motives. For example, individuals learn both techniques and committing crimes and the motivations and rationalizations through these people who are interacting with. They will teach you how to do it. They also provide rationalization or rationality for the behavior you do. Like my friend here said to you that, they feel looked down to those who are conforming to mainstream society. So they rationalize in a way their thoughts, and the rationalization empowers them. So differential exposure to different environments, then how frequent it is, and the duration, how much time you spent, and what kind of interactions you have with these people change the way you look to society and your attitudes. So there are 9 propositions of differential association theory that introduced by Sutherland. So let's go through one by one. So first one is criminal behaviors learned. Although we already talked about that criminal behavior is not born, like there's no born criminals. You only learn a criminal or deviant behavior through interactions. That is number one for the differential association theory. Learning occurs through communication. This process of learning deviance happens through interactions and communications with others. So when you are communicating with others, you are getting 2 things, as we mentioned already. First, you are learning techniques to do what you do, the criminal or deviant behavior. Also, you're getting rationalization for doing that. And the Sutherland is also saying that you also get motivation, that they push you to do certain things. For example, when it comes to smoking marijuana or drugs, right? They introduce you to these drugs, and they will rationalize using drugs. It can be like, oh, people have alcohol and drugs are less harmful than alcohol, for example. Or it can be like, you live once in life, and it's what's the point of living if you don't enjoy anything? I don't know, like certain kinds of stuff, right? And then they are like, here, you can smoke this. They will provide you with skills, they will provide you with rationalization, and they provide you motivations. So that's how deviant or criminal behaviors start. Learning primarily takes place within the intimate personal groups. So it does not happen if you just know the person from school and you are not close to that person. You have to be very close, intimate with that person, like in the family environment or friendship environment, or people have maybe romantic what is called a relationship with those people, and that's when actually learning happens, not from interpersonal communication such as media and books. You cannot really just read a book about that and get motivated and learn techniques, and people can probably do that about some things, but usually they learn from the intimate relationships. For example, there are some research done that if person is in an intimate relationship or romantic relationship with a person who uses alcohol, the likelihood of they are trying to fit and trying to make it work leads them to try alcohol or become alcoholic. Or same thing applies to for drug users or people who do other kinds of criminal behaviors or deviant behaviors. So the learning includes techniques and attitudes. Individuals learn the methods of committing crimes and the associated rationalizations. We already talked about that. The techniques of doing that is not enough. You have to also rationalize them. A specific direction of motives is learned from definitions of the legal code. People may see laws as either favorable or unfavorable, and this influences their behavior. Certain groups certainly might have experienced that laws are very unfavorable towards them, especially for when we look at the class structure. For example, when we look at the beginning of in the 19th century, bourgeois and proletariat, how discussed in Karl Marx's writings, and that the explanation of that is the class inequality happens because certain laws and regulations favor certain groups over other groups, right? So that is class inequality. So these people may see that laws unfavorable to do certain things in life or get ahead, right? So that's why people just get out of their, or maybe they will get attached to these people who give them sense of belonging or empower them, because in society probably they felt down, right? And the look at this picture. Probably when people are unfavorable of road regulations, or they don't care about them, can use their phones while driving, or can get distracted with other things because they don't care too much about them. They have certain kind of rationalization in their mind. Maybe they're saying like, "Oh, I'm fine. I will check my phone. I'm not going to harm anybody. I'm get used to it. I'm very good at it." Those all are rationalizations given to a driver by his or herself. And excessive definitions, that's when we are talking about when a person encounters more definitions favorable to violation of certain laws and regulations, that like driving and being on the phone. The seventh is differential associations vary in frequency, duration, priority, and intensity. So how we talk to other people or interact with other people can vary. For example, we can associate ourselves with school peers, which like they like to study, get ahead of their game by becoming a good professional, right? And then we can associate with this group that is just kind of like subgroup criminals or deviant subgroup. We are associating with them, and how we act in society depends whom we're associating more. If you're associating with this group who are studying and becoming professionals, then we might ignore that part at some point. We might disconnect ourselves from the other subgroup and go with this direction. Or if we're associating ourselves with the other subgroup who are encouraging, for example, using alcohol and drugs and breaking laws and stuff, we might disconnect with this professional group and then go that direction. So it depends how much people are associating themselves. The eighth is the learning process involves the same mechanisms as any other learning. This is just saying as that, this is learning. You learn good stuff or bad stuff. You can learn from your childhood all the skills you need to become a great person, or you can learn this stuff to deviating from laws, regulations, connecting with this people who are disrespecting laws or breaking laws, and both of them is the same skills learned throughout human life, right? The ninth and the last one is criminal behavior is an expression of needs and values, but not explained by them. So everybody has needs for food, shelter, money, some good time, friends. All of those are our needs as human beings. So criminal behavior is an expression of needs. So you can take your needs and then can satisfy them in a right way or wrong way. For example, you really need money to do certain things. Maybe somebody is ill in a family, you need to get um, the medicine for them or look after them. You can get a job and work hard and get that money that takes more time and then get that medicine. Or you can go ahead and associate with these deviant groups and then go and steal them. So how you deal with your needs depends on what kind of groups you're exposed to. Just because someone needs money or desires success doesn't mean they will necessarily engage with criminal behavior. It depends on the social learning environment. So what we're learning is based on our environment. That's the ninth principle in Sutherland's theory. So where do we see this differential association theory is used? So juvenile delinquency is you know that young offenders that called juvenile delinquency and today Sutherland's theory has been used to explain why young people engage in crime, particularly when they come from environments with criminal family members or peers. So sometimes we need to understand why people do what they do. For that reason, differential association theory is used to understand their background, where they are coming from, who their family members are, and what they do, and what kind of crimes they have done before, or those helps to understand people, their environment, and perhaps that's important to understand how they can change the environment, right? White collar crimes. White collar crimes, you know that professional people committing crime in the corporate level, that they change the numbers and then they for their own interests, and then they can take advantage of this big Sam money. That's called white collar crimes. Sutherland expanded his theory to explain crimes committed by professionals, emphasizing that deviant behaviors are not just a lower class phenomena, but can also be learned in corporate settings. So when you are accountant, for example, and you get hired in this corporation, you're working there, and then the other accountants who worked before you say like, hey, you know what? You can change this a little bit, and then that whole group or you can benefit getting a little bit more money. So somebody can teach you how to do that, and you go ahead and commit that crime. So the differential association theory is not only used for this lower level or lower class people, poor people. It's also used to explain white collar crime. Also, differential association theory used to understand subcultures. That's what my friend here was talking about. The theory helps to explain how subculture groups, for example, gangs or mafias or street crimes, the groups with street crimes, reinforce criminal behavior through shared norms and values that support deviance. So that is another application of Sutherland's theory. As I always say, that there are criticism in academia everywhere. Whenever you come up with a good idea or good theory, there's always people, just finds parts that's, not can be criticized, and therefore they're open for improvement, which is good thing. The criticism towards differential association theory was like overemphasis on socialization. So it talks about like its focus is towards socialization a lot. There's an argument that the theory neglects the role of individual choice in biological or psychological factors. So when we think about the association, some people perhaps did not associate themselves with certain groups, but there was a motivation, and then they made choices to commit that crime. So that is one of the critics. Difficulty in testing. Some scholars claim that it's challenging to measure and test concepts like definitions favorable to crime or frequency and intensity. So there is the part that, oh, you have to go a little bit more defined, or tell us more about what do you mean by definitions favorable to crime, like we talked about when somebody um, define certain crime as saying like, oh, this is better way to do it because the law is towards rich people, so we have to create our own, and this is why it's justified. That's a definition favorable to crime, right? That means that crime is okay because the law is only favoring certain groups in society. So frequency and intensity, again, we have to be more clear about what do we mean by that. Neglect structural functions. Yay, there are, again, conversations about structural functionalism. The theory doesn't fully explain how larger social structures like poverty or inequality influence crime. So when we are saying you're associated or interaction with these groups encouraging you to do crime, it does not take into consideration what is about if you are born in that environment, born in poverty, and then all this kinds of stuff is happening. Also, there are people, some people are doing it, some people are not doing it, just cannot explain to it. For example, in the family environment, all kids are exposed to similar things, and one of them can turn this way and one of them can turn that way. That can be like saying like how this happened, right? But also we need to remember that individual people are open to different groups and different ideas, and that family does not prevent them from being having interactions with that group. So, conclusion. Differential association theory provides framework for understanding deviant behavior, including crimes or learned social, the crimes that are learned in the social context. Um, it highlights the importance of social groups who we are interacting with in shaping human behavior. Who are our intimate groups, our friends, defines our identity, how we shape our identity. And also, like, there is an old saying like, tell me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. Basically, Sutherland's reflecting on that idea and giving some insights with academic work that actually that's important to know who you are associating, and that direction you take in life can vary based on your interactions. So that was our lecture today, and I thank my friend for coming out and talking about her experiences, and thank you for watching this, and I will see you in our next lectures. And if you have any questions, please write in our discussion board.